Mencer, a spokesperson for the Israeli government in the office of the Prime Minister. Good afternoon to you. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Sheila. Good to be with you.
Let's start with those talks between Israel and Lebanon. Talks for the first time in over 30 years, as I said. Hezbollah, to no one's surprise, has described those talks as a national sin. Engaging with Israel was a national sin that would widen divisions. How do you think those talks went?
Well, they're certainly historic, the first time that Israel and Lebanon have sat down since 1993, because both of our countries realised that with Hezbollah heavily weakened and their proxy in Iran as well also heavily weakened, that there's an opportunity here, because there really shouldn't be many issues between Israel and Lebanon. Back in 2000, Israel withdrew completely to the Blue Line, which is the UN recognised Blue Line. So there shouldn't be any real insurmountable issues between Israel and Lebanon. The only issue is this genocidal terrorist organisation that has fired thousands of rockets on the heads of our civilians, on Israelis, be they Jewish, be they Christian, be they Druze, be they Muslim. They have fired indiscriminately at our north, just 40 this morning. And Israel has a responsibility. And what's changed now, Sheila, is that Israel and the government of Lebanon are actually on the same side against this forward army of Iran.
Certainly since the outbreak of the Iran war, you've been able to see more of that in public statements from the president, for example, and others. And yet, Hezbollah still has a political place in Lebanese society and in Lebanese politics, parliament. How do you square that? Because without that, I guess Lebanon and Israel could say, great, let's get rid of those terrorists on our border and live in peace. But it's not quite that straightforward, is it?
Well, I sometimes think that British media sort of gives too much credence to this place of Hezbollah in Iranian society. They are hated in Lebanese society.
But they're in parliament, aren't they?
No, but they are hated by the overwhelming majority, 70 or 80% of Lebanese people. They've taken their country hostage. There should be only one army of Lebanon.
I agree with you, but they're still there politically. So just answer that, if you would. They are still there politically.
I will answer that, but you must not give some sort of credence to a rightful place for Hezbollah. There is no rightful place for terrorists in any society.
No, I'm talking about the political element in parliament.
Yeah, but it's the same thing. It's like the Nazis, Nazis in the Reichstag or Nazis with jackboots marching on the streets. They are one and the same thing. And what's unique about this situation is now Israel and the government of Lebanon are on the same page, and the overwhelming majority of Lebanese people are also believe that there is no place for an armed Hezbollah in Lebanon. Absolutely no place whatsoever.
You described what Hezbollah is doing and attempting to do as genocidal. Many people throw that word at Israel. I don't need to tell you that. The 100 missiles fired in 10 minutes last week, killing civilians, as you know. The backdrop of Gaza as well, and the claims of genocide in Gaza. Why do you describe one as genocidal and not allow for other people to see Israel's approach to its enemies as genocidal? Just explain that to those who would criticize.
Sure, Sheila. We have eliminated over 1,600 Hezbollah terrorists since February alone. Now, Hezbollah initiated this conflict. There'd be no doubt about that. They fire from civilian areas. They have started this war. Now, I don't want to sound like a dad arbitrating between his two kids about who started, but they started this war. They continue this war. They fire against us from their own civilian areas because they want civilian deaths.
So Hamas all over again? Hamas all over again?
And we have pushed Hamas into such a weakened state, and we have also pushed Hezbollah also to a weakened state. Now, we've always made clear, although it is extremely uncomfortable for Lebanese civilians to move out of harm's way, we make every effort.
And the reason I'm asking you this, I don't doubt the pressure Israel is under from its enemies. I don't. You're talking to somebody who does not doubt that.
The responsibility lies with Hezbollah, not with Israel. Not with Israel defending itself.
Let me ask you though.
Sheila, it's very important. The responsibility lies with Hezbollah, the terrorist force that started this war, that fire from civilian areas. So therefore, they are reaping what they sow, which is why the Lebanese government have come to us and said, please, let's work together to get rid of this terrorist organisation.
I understand.
They don't need Western media, Sheila. They don't need Western media in any way, shape or form. Although it's not your intention, but giving some sort of cover for Hezbollah because civilians have been killed. Civilians have been killed because Hezbollah started a war.
Please let me speak.
Sure, go ahead, it's your programme.
Well, thank you. I'm very keen to hear your voice too, but please let me speak. Nobody could ever accuse me of giving Hezbollah or Hamas cover. Nobody. I take
it very popular on the streets of London.
Well, maybe. I get a great deal of heat for it.
I know you do. I've seen that.
But as a friend of
You're
Israel...
one of the few, Sheila.
Well, let me speak. As a friend of Israel, as somebody who wants a thriving, safe Israel, I also want a moral Israel. And my question to you about what happened in Gaza and about what's happening in Lebanon is, when you look at Lebanon, I do not doubt your enemies there. I don't. But when you look at your approach, has it done moral injury to Israel, to Israel's place in the world? You have countries rejecting Israel's right to exist. They've been there a while. You have countries like the UK sanctioning members of the Israeli parliament, Itamar Ben-Gvir, case in point. You have countries, including our own Prime Minister, openly criticising this war against Iran. Are you fearful that a moral injury, for the best of intentions, a moral injury, though, has been done to Israel's reputation in the world and risks yet more isolation?
This question, I tell you, Sheila, in shorthand, the answer is we'd rather be alive than win the moral argument. Okay, we're being attacked by a genocidal army, a jihadi army, right? You, Sheila, know what jihadism is. It is a death cult. I mean, this word death cult is bandied about. They want to die. They see their objective is to die and to take as many Jews as possible with them. That is their objective. Now, we have a responsibility to defend ourselves. For 2.5 years, we've been making this case in the international media. And if the choice comes to the people of Israel or to Prime Minister Netanyahu, win some sort of notional moral argument, but allow your people to be massacred October the 7th style, then this government and this Prime Minister chooses the defence of our people, the only Jewish state in the world, with synagogues being attacked in the UK, in northwest London, in Finchley. This right here is the homeland, the only safe homeland for the Jewish people, which is why Jewish people in the UK, seeing this wokeism, seeing the weakness of your Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, seeing how he is, let's just call it what it is. It is appeasement, not understanding that this jihadism is after you as well. That is why that Jewish Londoners and Jewish people across the UK are thinking to themselves, I don't know if there's a future in the UK. And they're having that discussion loud and clear.
Is there a future? I know, I'm having it with them. Is there a future for the allyship, the alliance of Britain and Israel?
I hope so. We certainly hope so here in Israel. But right now,
you just said our Prime Minister is appeasing your enemies.
Well, he is. He's shown incredible weakness. And let me tell you, Iran are looking for targets around the world, and they're looking for weak targets. You know, this jihadism, it shows, just around Christmas time, around Hanukkah, it shows Australia, because it sensed the Australian government was equivocal. They were giving a hard time to Israel. And our message to the outside world is the Iranian jihadi regime is looking for soft targets. And for them, countries that don't understand the jihadist threat, which you in the UK are also facing, they are seen as soft targets by the UK, by Iran.
Donald Trump,
which is why, go ahead.
Donald Trump has said that the war, he's talking about the one on Iran, is very close to over. Is it close to over for Israel?
Well, we have an objective together with our US allies to ensure that Iran can never have a nuclear weapon, and to ensure that their ballistic threat, which has been so brutally effective around this region, not just in Israel, but also in countries across the Middle East, which can now reach London, right? Which are not prepared
so when Donald Trump says it's nearly over, and if he then says we stop,
well, look, I'll tell you straight, Sheila. Here's a job for the UK. Get Iran to give over their nuclear material, and this war is over in an instant.
But okay? Therefore, Donald Trump is wrong, because that is not imminent.
No, of course I'm not saying that, Sheila.
Well,
I'm not saying, because
logically Donald Trump is wrong to say it's nearly over, because there's no chance of that nuclear material being...
No, Sheila, we have precisely the same objectives. And President Trump has made this crystal clear. My Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, and together with Donald Trump, and almost every level of the administration and our militaries are in daily contact. This is a war we went into together. The UK and countries like France shied away because, unfortunately, they've been overtaken by a moral weakness, unfortunately, at the moment, which I think they will be punished for by their own people, because the great British people that stood up against fascism will not tolerate, I feel, it's up to the British people, of course, will not tolerate weakness on the international stage. We are together in our mission.
They're very in favour of Keir Starmer's decision not to join you and America in that war in Iran.
Well, I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's true. I think
all opinion polling has said it is decisively true.
None of us know. I think if you're a Guardian reader, and if you're a BBC watcher, and if you swallow the hostility
I'm
to
a
Israel.
poll reader, and I take calls every day from the British public, and there is a great deal of support for Keir Starmer's position on that. But that's just a fact. But can I ask you as well? You talked there about what will end the Iran war. Let's go back to Lebanon, if we could.
Sure.
If phase 2 of these talks in Islamabad happen and be more fruitful, if they conclude that Lebanon is part of any ceasefire agreement, does Israel accept that, or is Israel's position one rocket into Israel and we're coming for you?
Israel's position, in partnership with our US partners, is that we have supported President Trump's decision to suspend strikes against Iran for 2 weeks, and also for the efforts to ensure that Iran no longer possesses nuclear missiles or terrorist threat to the United States and to Israel. That is our position. On Lebanon, our objective is crystal clear. Hezbollah must be disarmed. There are many UN resolutions saying the same thing, unfortunately.
And if the ceasefire said it is part, if the talks say it is part of this ceasefire that is hopefully agreed, a kind of ceasefire, whatever the details of it are, after these phase 2 talks, if it says Lebanon, because there was confusion around this, if it says Lebanon is in those ceasefire arrangements, does Israel accept that, or does Israel say, as you've outlined a number of times, these guys are putting rockets into our back garden, into people's homes, we're coming for them? So I'm asking you, will you accept that if it's in the ceasefire?
Hezbollah must be disarmed.
That's not really answering my question.
No, it is precise. I'm giving you the Israeli position. That's my job, right? That's my job as the representative of the Israeli government. You're asking Israel's position. It's crystal clear. Hezbollah must be disarmed.
Okay, so you're saying no. Is that what you're saying to me?
UN resolutions.
You're saying no to me.
We are now have initiated a process together with the Lebanese people, the Lebanese government. For the first time since 1993, we're on the same side of the equation, the government of Lebanon and Israel, and we both say extremely strongly that there is no place for a terrorist organisation on our northern border. Let me give you this last point. After October the 7th, Israel will never tolerate a genocidal jihadi army that is devoted to our destruction on any of our borders.
This blockade in the Middle East of Iranian ports, and that threat I read at the very beginning of our conversation to widen their response to it from Iran. What do you make of what's going on there? Was President Trump's decision to respond to a blockade with a blockade the right decision? It's causing huge economic damage and threat around the world.
Well, the Prime Minister said that we think that the spike in oil prices is very much a short-term thing. I think we just ask your listeners to think of this is Iran now without a nuclear weapon. Imagine if they did have a nuclear weapon. It'd be £10 a litre in the UK. Never mind the spike which has gone up to now. And our Prime Minister has said that we do support President Trump's decision to suspend the strikes on Iran for a couple of weeks. Precisely with the purpose of ensuring that Iran can no longer have a nuclear nuclear missiles, nuclear weapons, or a terrorist threat or missile threat to this country and to the United States.
And so the economic pain that's caused, and again, nobody's holding America or Israel solely responsible.
Well, the economic pain is caused by Iran. I think you should be, you shouldn't have any illusions for that. It has been caused by Iran. We get international law thrown at us all the time. That is an international waterway which they are blocking. So that is rule one. That's the first line of international law. That should be a free and open waterway to allow goods and traffic to go through. But there are alternatives, and Israel has already come up with, together with the US and together with countries like India, together with many countries in this region, there are alternatives to the Straits of Hormuz.
They just take a long time and they cost a lot more, and that filters down to the consumer.
No, it doesn't cost a lot more, and it will get rid of this whole stranglehold which Iran is trying to holding the world hostage right now.
Well, shipping leads tell me it costs a lot more.
That's because they have a vested interest.
I know we have to leave it there for now, but can I ask you, would you come back on the programme with me in good order, good time? I want to talk in some detail, we don't have time for it today, but in some detail about the West Bank and what's going on there, and the latest on Gaza and the Board of Peace, because it's gone a bit quiet on Gaza and we don't quite know where that Board of Peace scenario is up to yet. So can I invite you back on at some point to dig down into both of those issues?
Look, all of us here in the Prime Minister's office know that LBC is a very important station, and we are only too happy to come on and share with you our position.
Right, we'll arrange that. Thank you very much indeed, David Mencer, spokesperson for the Israeli government in the office of the Prime Minister. It's 2:21. Dug down into lots of issues in relation to the Iran war and the war in the wider Middle East, and also the situation in Lebanon with Israel, with David Mencer. We never have enough time for conversations, do we? I wanted to talk more about the West Bank and Gaza as well, but we will at a future date. But why don't we focus this hour in our discussion on the UK's relationship with Israel? Because I think it's fair to say that it has changed. Maybe on the surface of it, there are some very sort of familiar elements to it. I know that for some of you listening, you would rather it was either non-existent or very changed, or that the Prime Minister and the government would be a great deal more critical of Israel's actions. Clearly others of you will feel differently about it. I think it's undeniable that it's changed. I think when you have a UK government sanctioning members of the Israeli government, I think of people like Itamar Ben-Gvir, the sort of hard right, his role in the government is police and security minister. His words, some of his actions related to the West Bank, related to Gaza, are not doing Israel's moral arguments any favour at all, and they are atrocious, many of the comments he's made. And his choices around how to police Israelis themselves are pretty grim as well. And all of that is being, of course, permitted by Benjamin Netanyahu. So I want to ask that question: at what point, for you, might Israel stop being regarded as an ally by the UK? Maybe you think that's already happened. I think it's clear that in this Labour government, there are, I'll choose my words carefully, there are more Israel-critical voices than perhaps there would be in a Conservative government. That we've already felt that that particular muscle in Parliament being flexed, haven't we? At what point? Maybe you think the point has already arrived, but let me just ask the question: at what point does Israel, in your mind, stop being an ally to the UK, or other way around? At what point does the UK decide not to be an ally to Israel? I personally think that's a long way off. But how do you see it? 0345 606 84850. And one of the reasons I want to talk with David Mencer in future about the West Bank, what's happening to the farmers, the shepherds, the people, the Palestinians who live in the West Bank, is that I think it does do a moral injury to Israel for what the government is allowing people like Itamar Ben-Gvir to get away with, the settlers to get away with. Benjamin Netanyahu is either turning a blind eye to it or sanctioning it, certainly permitting it. In some cases, we see IDF engagement there that is far from the full force of the law against settlers attacking and killing some of the Palestinians who live in that area. And it's being overshadowed and ignored, that situation, I think, because of the arguably much bigger, geopolitically bigger, I mean, not in human terms, but the bigger issues like Iran, like Lebanon. But it shouldn't be. And I want to talk about it in more detail because I think it does a real moral injury to Israel, what's going on there. At what point do you think our relationship with Israel becomes not just shaky, as I think it probably is at the moment, but in real danger? 0345 6060